Alrighty. I am seeing audio there. I'm seeing stuff down there. I've got my tea. Yeah. There we go. It looks like we're live. Now I can just pause that, get that ready. Stream health is a little low as it negotiates everything. But I think we should be up and running here in a reasonable way momentarily, which is cool. Hello everyone. Happy anime. Happy Friday. Always nice having that. Getting to Friday. Really exhausted this week, to be honest. Just work was kind of exhausting. A lot of stuff happening. You know, nothing too terrible. Just a lot of stuff going on. Sort of a transitional week at work, which happens sometimes. So, just scrolling through the news here real quick to see if there's anything I really wanted to mention. Anything really big story-wise. I'm not seeing anything. I'll probably miss something, but I like what I'm seeing seems pretty reasonable. Always something going on. Always the way, right? Always more stuff happening. World Cosplay Summit coming in Japan. Bandai Namco teaser site for new title. Tomo working on a new thing. That's interesting. Ikuhara's next anime coming. I'll click on that one. See if there's anything really nuts. Crunchyroll adding a whole bunch of stuff. Funimation getting all its stuff. Let's see here. So Amazon got Flying Witch, Gate, Initial D Legend 1, No Game No Life 0, Sonic X, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 2. And they're streaming a few of this season's anime, which I should check up on. Crunchyroll will be publishing the Bungo Stray Dogs smartphone game. Interesting. Wonder why they're expanding into smartphone games. Hey Jay, nope, I'm just spinning up. What's nice Izakaya is getting a Blu-ray release thanks to over 300 pre-orders, which is cool. It's a Japanese release, I believe. Yeah. So hopefully that means a domestic release is coming. Bandai Namco, he's a new original work. Looks like, so they call it Ninja Box. Looks sort of Yokai Watch-esque. So Katsuhiro Otomo is working on a new full-length manga. Uncertain what that means. He said he wanted to do a manga set in the Meiji era. Without assistance, that would be quite the challenge. Alright, so Kunihiko Ikuhara's next anime project, story summary, stages Asakusa, which is a sort of traditional area of Tokyo. One day, 3 second-year middle school students, Kazuki Yasuka, whatever, meet a Kappa-like creature named Kepi, who's a self-proclaimed heir to the throne of Kappa. He forcibly takes the student's Shirikodama, mythical organ compass, steal through a person's rear end. They're transformed into Kappa. If you want to return to your former selves, you need to connect in that way. You must bring me the Shirikodama of zombies. And so they have to basically do that to various zombies, and then 2 policemen get involved. So, boy protagonists, which is kind of weird. The policemen are very pretty men. kind of funny. It'll be a radio program as usual. So it looks like a show about transformation and identity, looks like. Being made by MAPPA, that did Yuri on Ice and In This Corner of the World and such. So that'll be interesting. So Ikuhara always does interesting stuff. Crunchyroll has removed all the Funimation shows. But certain shows that were part of Funimation's agreement with Crunchyroll remain on both platforms. So Centaur's Life, Berserk, Brave Witches, Chaos Child, Bungo Stray Dog Season 1, Konkoli, Magical Girl Raising Project, Taboo Tattoo. A few others are staying because there's an explicit contract in place for them. Meanwhile, Funimation has thrown 300 anime works on Funimation now. Or rather, that is coming over the next week or so. Wow. ANN has a full list, and it is absurd how much anime is on this list. All of Yu Yu Hakusho, most of Tenchi, like the entire Tenchi franchise, Lane, Buru, Shimoneta, Psychopaths, Ping Pong, Phantom, Origin the movie, Noragami, whole bunch of stuff. Ikitosen, a bunch of the seasons, Hitalia, Heaven's Lost Property, Ghost in the Shell Arise, Fairy Tail. Wow, all of Fairy Tail is going on Funimation now. Well, that's why they're doing it. Hello, we stick together. Funimation is moving there because they're like, well, all of our content is on this other service that doesn't make us any money. I mean, there's probably some licensing money involved, but... Oh, that's right, Yokai Watch 3 has been announced for US release, which is cool. Definitely trying to get that interest going. Hello, Firelord Azula, and hey, Game Escape. Good to see y'all. So I guess that was the big news a couple weeks ago. Funimation moving over to Crunchyroll, or moving off of Crunchyroll. But that's... I think we've all gotten used to that news by now. Let's see. And then Verve is pulling Funimation now out of its stuff, because they own Crunchyroll, and so everything gets split into the various places, as that is how things normally go. So that's kind of interesting. It's interesting that to release a Blu-ray of Isekai Izakaya only required 300 minimum orders. And then there were... the Blu-ray gets progressively more powerful, or gets progressively more stuff with every basically 100 more pre-orders. So you get a coin. Wow, an actual key animation frame with serial number. At 500 pre-orders, 600, 700, 1,000. Hope we get something like that over here. That'd be cool. Yeah. Well, isn't it like a Sony Business Holding Corporation owns Funimation? Like, it's not Sony Pictures Entertainment. It's one of those weird things. Yeah, doing kind of a relaxed, chill news segment. Just sort of skimming through the news for interesting stuff. Not a big shock, anything going on there. Crunchyroll adds 8 more dubbed anime. So Classroom of the Elite, Moros Mononokean, Orange, Real Life, Saga Tanya the Evil, Urahara. Okay. I guess just stuff they've licensed. Huh. So we'll probably need another few weeks for all that to settle down in terms of who's doing what and who's got what and who's got the license and where all that's going. So eventually we'll just have multiple services, which is kind of good. Monopolies are always frightening. Monopolies usually tend to have great inefficiencies. So it's not a bad thing to see that we're going to have stronger competition and help to push things forward a little bit more. But yeah, hopefully that'll push them a little bit. It's funny, I always felt Funimation and Crunchyroll were competitors, and kind of surprised that they were working that closely together. So now it's more real. Oh, I wanted to show you guys something. I've been playing around, as I mentioned before, with 3D printing stuff, and 3D printing some anime-style characters with some desktop printers. In fact, I have another print going right there. Here's an attempt at a Hatsune Miku figurine. And unfortunately, in cleaning it up, I broke off a lot of the hair pieces and such. You can get a sense of the level of detail on the character. Pretty good. Let me actually get out of the frame so it'll zoom in and focus a little better. There we go. So you get a sense. So a fair amount of detail there. Not too great. Similarly, I had some problems 3D printing this girl's arms, and some bits of the print just kind of didn't quite go through, so she has some gaps in her skirt. I don't think that's intentional. I'm not sure. Kind of a fun model here of a girl in jacket, skirt, backpack. Nice detail, definitely. So this is definitely more on the scale of an actual model you'd have, and she has her boots and her motorcycle helmet, of course. What's funny is there's a break in the back, so she has a little bit of a. You can see right through to the panties. If I don't know if they actually. No, it's just plastic, right? But yeah, that's pretty good. And then here's a bust in multiple senses of the word. So this is Hana, 3D printed, and still trying to get some of the details worked out just right. But you can see she printed pretty well. You're getting there's the back of the hair, and this is the full model. She doesn't have arms or anything. This is how it's supposed to look. Pretty nice. They're not that expensive. I mean, this one here, you can get refurbished for $120 US. Shipped to your door. And new, it's $200. So, I mean, certainly not an impulse purchase, but that's what, 3 video games, new run, right? So it's not bad. So this printed in 2 pieces. This girl, it's basically everything down to the bottom of the shirt. They glued together. So I want to play around a little bit more with the model, and maybe there's just something wrong with the file and so forth. These I did not print on the $120 printer. These were on a bigger one. The $120 printer is I could have printed this on the $120 printer though. I just happened to use a different one, but this probably would have fit. It's got a 4-inch cube build volume, that small one. So yeah, I could have done these probably. That's about 4 inches. So yeah, and that is the resolution you can achieve on those things. So this, I mean, you could scale it down. You can get it within 4 inches. In fact, let's check. Yeah. This is 5.5. So you can get it that big on a $120 printer. Not bad. And of course, you could also just slice the model in half, print it in 2 pieces, and then glue them together. I've certainly done that in the past. So yeah, there are a lot of possibilities there. So we'll see. What's funny is the Miku figurine, and I'll probably have to reprint her in different configuration to make it work. In fact, I'm doing that right now. What you're hearing in the background, perhaps, is I have one of the printers going on another version of this that has a different configuration. But on the bottom, they actually put a little thing, Animu at Thingiverse. Thingiverse being one of the major 3D printing websites. So kind of a clever place to put that too. But yeah, just want to give you guys an idea of what you can do with that stuff. I would recommend not waiting because the problem is I have several friends who've been waiting for years getting up 3D printing until it gets right. And the problem is if you wait until it's improved, you'll still need to learn how to use a 3D printer. So you'll still be way behind the curve for when the quality and all that stuff gets better. So if you're interested at all, I would recommend jumping in as quickly as you could. How much is the material cost? This is maybe 50 cents of material, if that. You get 2.2 pounds of material for 20 bucks or so. And well, let's work out the numbers. It's 1 kilogram, right? 1 kilogram is these rolls. Yeah. That's 1 kilogram in a roll. This is 67 grams. So, calculator. So, $20 divided by, that's going to be what? 1,000 grams, 100 grams, 10 grams, 1 gram. So that's 0.067 or 0.067. 20 times 0.067. Is it 0.067 or 0.6? Must be 0.067. Yeah, 13 cents. So this is about 13 cents worth of material, I think. Yeah, that's about right. So yeah, definitely getting there. And heck, I mean, I'd paint this up and put it somewhere. In fact, I might do that. Been playing around with some of these things, and so I think once I get all that stuff figured out, I still got some stuff in there I need to get out. But yeah, I think this stuff is definitely to that point where with a little bit more of playing around, it's pretty much there. Oh, edible materials? Yeah. Yeah, they've had like chocolate printers and icing printers and such for years. That's been around for a little while now. You definitely do that. The problem is you don't want to mix materials, right? If you have a printer that can print chocolate, you don't want to then print plastic out of the same thing and then try to print chocolate because there'll be plastic in the thing, right? So you gotta be more careful about that stuff. So yeah, if it's a clean new printer and you only use it for food, totally fine. But for anything else, it's a little problematic. And a lot of the stuff they've done, one of the problems with 3D printing is you need something that is that flows, right? Because it has to be squirted out. And finding materials that flow well, but that also bake in an interesting way is kind of difficult, right? Because like dough, think pizza dough or bread dough doesn't really flow. You can't just squirt it out in a shape. It has this elasticity and so forth. So you can do frosting, that totally works. You can use melted chocolate, but pizza dough doesn't really work well. But you could do like sauce. So you could lay out a pizza dough, and then squirt tomato sauce on it, and maybe melted cheese, that kind of stuff. So food gets tricky after a while. Certainly something doable, but you're not going to get the kind of thing that we're used to in a regular restaurant out of a 3D printer, which is fine. It's a new thing. And the other part of the problem is you have to do a lot of processing to make it so that it is usable in a 3D printer, right? So it's yeah, I guess Jello. I mean, well, because Jello is pretty solid. If you extruded it out, it's going to break apart. I guess you're right. You could find a form of Jello, like you get Jello to a particular consistency and squirt it out. But yeah, like you don't want to do, you don't want to squirt cream because the cream is going to goop everywhere. So yeah, it's interesting seeing where that's going to go. But it's kind of hard, and part of the problem too is we should be eating just whole foods anyway. Why mash strawberries into a jelly and then use that to 3D print instead of just eating a strawberry, right? Yeah, right. Before it solidifies, you can find some intermediary form of Jello. That'd be interesting. Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, the cool thing is that it can be done, at home. The fact that it's a there we go. It's a thing that you can do with off-the-shelf parts and off-the-shelf materials. It's really, really, really cool. So we'll see where all that goes. I mean, you've all seen, I'm sure, the story of the 3D printer on the International Space Station, where if they need this one particular wrench, they can just print it, or a particular screw or something. Now, obviously, a 3D printed object is not going to be the same as a regular cast metal or injection molded part, but very useful. Oh, definitely. I mean, think about a circuit board, right? Just being able to lay down just lines of metal on a circuit board. That's really what a circuit board is. You could just 3D print a circuit on a circuit board. Really cool. And the software can make sure that that circuit is laid down properly, that everything gets connected correctly. But they have 3D printed houses, 3D printed cars. Yeah, medical field, 3D printed teeth, particularly, but also like 3D printed organs, like skin graft kind of stuff, where you need a particular shape to fit on somebody. You can use this artificial skin and print it in just the right shape to mold. Like an ear is a great example, where it has to be really, really, really weird shape-wise, and you can just 3D print exactly the right thing for a person who has exactly this particular shape of ear and head and so forth. Really cool. Another great example where it's being used is prosthetics for kids. So if you're a kid that doesn't have a hand, prosthetics are prohibitively expensive because they have to be fitted to your size, and you grow. So you grow out of your prosthetic. Whereas with 3D printing, exactly, limbs, you can 3D print a new hand every 6 months for the kid. And so it never becomes uncomfortable, and you can customize it so kids will get Iron Man hands or Hulk hands. Really, really effective use of the technology, and it can be custom designed for that kid without costing an arm and a leg. Ha ha ha! Terrible joke. So that actually ties into kind of what I'd like to talk about tonight, which is the future in anime, and how anime tends to often has science fictional storylines in it. And obviously science fiction is not always trying to predict the future precisely, but it's interesting seeing when anime is set in the future, and especially in a recognizable future, not just spaceships and jump gates, but seeing those technological trends and where anime is usefully predictive, right? So not necessarily not necessarily trying to get every detail of the future right, but where, oh yeah, like we are doing kind of that thing that they said we would be doing, one way or the other. Kind of like 2001, where people kind of laughed for a long time that 2001 had these had video phones and we never got there. And now we have Skype, right, and Google Hangouts and such. So I think anime is interesting because anime often, when it does tackle the future, it is often doing so in a sociological way. So it's not about a specific technology. It's about what the future is going to feel like. Akira is a great example, where Akira wasn't predicting necessarily, but was presenting a near future of decay, and where the near future was not going to look all that different from the modern times. You know, we were going to have these advanced motorcycles and those sorts of cool things, but we weren't all walking around wearing jumpsuits and eating pills, right? Everyone went to restaurants, you know. People still marched on the streets and carried flags and such. The future is always evolutionary, not revolutionary, in the main. So yeah, there's. I think we can see the future of Akira much more clearly than we can of others. I can go back to Serial Experiments Lain, and how remarkably prescient that was. Not in the specifics, but in the sense of, yeah, like we're all on the internet now, and that is ubiquitous. And there, we all are, in a sense, trapped in the internet, in the sense that it is this thing that everyone uses. So if you're not using it, you are losing out. And so you have to align yourself one way or the other towards the internet, whether wholly into it or partially into it, so forth and so on. But you can't just ignore the internet anymore. You have to forcefully get away from it or whatever. You're absolutely right. And I think one of the interesting things about anime is because anime is often made by geeks who are futurists. We like thinking about the future. We like hoping for a cool future of lightsabers and spaceships and aliens and such. So, sci-fi anime tends to look forward to pique people's interest in these possible technologies. Den-O Coil is a perfect example of that, where it's like, this is AR. Augmented reality is going to be a thing at some point. Let's explore a future where that is just ubiquitous and what that means, right? What that means for how we relate to each other. Whoop, hello. Come on, focus. Okay. That is something that's kind of interesting to dig into. This idea that, yeah, we're gonna have we're gonna have a world where you can interact with both the real world and digital things that are layered on top of it. And that, what's it like being a kid growing up in that world where kids will understand that there's a difference between the real world and the digital world, but they will be much more blurred for them, and they will find it much easier to blur those lines than adults do, where adults tend to be very kind of black and white on those things. Right, Planet Tess, where I think Planet Tess is a great example of digging into an actual future issue, space junk, which had kind of made the rounds, but suddenly with an anime series is like, okay, here we can actually point to an example of this is what it looks like. These are the possible consequences. We can see them dramatically represented. Planet Test has been a really useful piece of media for space scientists to point people to say, hey, this is how that works. Den-O Coil was I'm very glad I watched that show. Hayao Miyazaki, a Studio Ghibli series crossed with Serial Experiments Lain. Weird show, but definitely it executes on its premise. That is that thing. That is interesting, Tonto, about Ao Mau Mau. I'm probably mispronouncing that, and how it is. It does exhibit some of the signs of being a probe. Who knows? Yeah, well, and a lot of especially the late '80s, early '90s anime had the dystopian tone, um, partly as a reaction to what was going on at the time, right? Because of the big boom of the '80s, there were always people reacting against that, saying it's never going to last, and so Akira was this this warning sign saying, hey, eventually the bubble is going to burst. And because the bubble did burst like 2 years later, it was seen as very prescient, which it was in a way. And in the 90s, it's like, okay, well, now we're actually, we're seeing the effects of that bubble bursting, and so we're going to imagine that future. Um, right, I think Dot Hack's a great example where it is, in a sense, a warning tale about a future in which folks are spending so much time in this VR world that they can get literally sucked into it, and that's kind of scary, but also without suggesting that online world is without value, right? One of the things I love about Dot Hack Sign is that is a series about that group of people coming together for a good cause through this game, right? Not because they all happen to live together, because they all happen to play this game together, and what a positive influence that game was on people. So basically saying, there are good and bad sides, and we have to be aware of that. You know, the underlying problem of Dot Hack is a rather obvious symbol for the problems of being addicted to a game, but still. But yeah, so yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There was a lot of dystopian stuff back then, and granted, I mean there was plenty to be dystopian about back then, right? I mean there were plenty of bad things going on in the '80s and '90s that we tend to not think about because pop culture has colored that time in a particular way, right? I could not get through Ready Player One. I got to like chapter 4, and it was just all info dump. The book, at least, it was just, and very didactically written info dump. And I'm like, I've read a lot of science fiction, and a lot of these sorts of future worlds, and they don't have to do this. So I just couldn't get into it. That's my flaw. Right. Well, yeah. Time of Eve, absolutely. I mean, in Time of Eve is in a way a throwback to the classic '50s science fiction stories about AI and androids and the social implications thereof, and dealing with this question of, okay, when we have the technology. One of the things I love about Time of Eve is that its subtitle is "Are you enjoying the time of Eve?" Meaning, the purpose of technology is to enrich our lives. It's to make life more fun and interesting. It's not just about utility, although that's certainly there. And so, as these new technologies come in, are we enjoying them? Are we getting things out of them? A lot of folks do not find Facebook, enjoyable. I'm one of those people. And so that's, turning into a social ill rather than a social good. We'll see where society falls on that line ultimately. But that is kind of the key question. It's not just will technology happen. It's what is are the effects of these technologies ultimately positive for our societies? One of the reasons we don't have spaceships is because we don't need spaceships, right? We don't need robots yet. There are uses for them, but we don't, most people don't sit in their houses and think, what would be better to be in my house? A robot, right? It isn't really a part of our lives. Whereas thinking, gee, if I could just say to a black cylinder, what's the weather going to be tomorrow, and it just told me, that'd be awesome. So this is the utility isn't quite there, and of course robotics are hard, and AI is hard. Navigating a house on two legs is a very, very, very difficult problem. So we're just not there yet. And finding those use cases for it, right? Okay, so you have a robot in your house. So what? What's it good for? Why is it taking up space? There needs to be a strong killer app for the robot to make it worthwhile. But yeah, totally. Time of Eve is a great example of that. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Game Escape, that anime's vision of the future has absolutely changed over the years. I would say it's interesting. I mean, in the 60s and 70s, it was in a way very apocalyptic, in that it was giant robot series about aliens attacking, right? Or it was Yamato, where Earth's biosphere had almost completely collapsed, or Galactic Express 39s, where people were pretty miserable. There's a lot of tragedy out there in space. Even Gundam kills off half the human population in the first 30 seconds. So there was that kind of apocalyptic aspect to a lot of science fiction at the time, in this weird way. I agree, Game Escape, which actually Time of Eve hints at, by the way, that the first androids are, assisted medical devices. So I think that will work. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, AI is going to take several seconds to perfect. That's oof. Yeah. And we'll probably see it out of Japan. Japan has such an aging population that the utility of that is very clear, and can just jump straight to people are going to, and especially in Japan, where, as they say, Westerners have the Terminator, we have Astro Boy in Japan. The Japanese elderly will very much accept with open arms a robot in their house, whereas over here we'd find it a little bit creepier. And yeah, it could be extremely, extremely useful. Yeah, you're right. Sci-fi anime just keeps evolving all the time. So yeah, there's the kind of that apocalypse of the 70s. Part of the problem is that war anime tends to be apocalyptic in anime, and war stories tend to be apocalyptic in anime, and war is an easy plot line, so it tends to be the default go-to plot of any given shonen series, especially. So you tend to get dark apocalyptic storylines with anime. I like seconds better. A few seconds, just a few seconds. But yeah, and the Jetsons is interesting because the Jetsons were kind of this. It was a sitcom in the future where it was basically a 50s, Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver sitcom, just transported into the future. So they weren't trying to be realistic, right? They needed, the father needed to go off to work every day, and the kids needed homework, and all of the trappings of a 50s sitcom. So they just, gave everyone flying cars and all that kind of stuff. There's kind of this weird mishmash of concepts. But then we grew up with that as being like, oh, won't it be great in the future when we have these things? But that wasn't really the metaphor. The Jetsons are kind of weird. Are there any animes that deal with the lived experience of environmental catastrophe? First off, they've been predicting environmental catastrophe since the 70s. So I'm not convinced. Right, exactly. Yeah, there's always conflict. And the Golden Age stories were more than willing to show that their futures weren't perfect. But it was definitely more optimistic that, okay, there's going to be poor people and there's going to be suffering, but it's also not going to be everyone suffering all the time. Right, Asimov's laws are designed with, they're kind of designed with both. It was basically sitting down and saying, okay, we need to figure out a realistic set of laws that can be easily explained in a storytelling in a story, and that provide interesting storytelling, loopholes, basically.
Fractal, absolutely, yeah, Fractal. I mean, Fractal's not really an environmental catastrophe, but it is definitely about the dangers of technology and about unthinking acceptance of technology. Totally. Um, um, right, yeah, and Cyberpunk is all about, everything is going to pieces. I'd love to see optimistic Cyberpunk. I'm sure it's out there, but I'd love to see a story that's basically says, we are fighting back against the megacorps, and there is a chance we're going to win. That'd be kind of cool. Actually, Max Headroom kind of had that quality, where it was, Max Headroom didn't feel as hopeless as the average Cyberpunk story. I love Max Headroom. It did not age well. It looks very hokey and cheesy now, but it was a shock. It blew people's minds when it came out. Ghost in the Shell. So that's absolutely one of the key stories because it is about integration with technology. And what's interesting about Ghost in the Shell is that it's about one-way integration with technology, right? Meiji Kusanagi cannot get her original body back. She is a cyborg for the rest of her life, and they say that at one point in the movie. And that is one of the fundamentals of that storyline is this idea that, okay, you are part of this future. You are part of this thing. You just can't go back. And you have to deal with that psychologically. And I think it's the psychological aspect of that anime tends to touch on more than Western stories do. Anime rarely delves into it in any great detail. But they certainly delve into it a little bit more than the average Western, sci-fi action movie. But at least Ghost in the Shell takes that step of saying, you have to come to peace with this, of realizing that you are interwoven with these things and you can't just, slough it off. And that's a much more mature approach to it, right? Yes, Yep. I am aware of that manga. I have the original flopped version, released in America in... When was this released? 1995. Wow. So this is probably a fairly valuable volume, actually. Shiro actually hand-flopped this for the American release. He went back in and changed the art so people were right-handed instead of left-handed and so forth. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is the censored version, in fact. Well, censored. They cut out one page that contains a lesbian sex scene. And it adds nothing to the plot. But, yeah, totally. And this is interesting because it is not as... It does not have a singular vision as the movie does. This is much more of this ongoing story where Shiro is sometimes just doing straight up detective action stories, right? And there's really not much about these themes in there, but other things. Yeah, and they eventually released a version that has it restored. I think in the most recent, probably the most recent couple of releases in America, they've restored that sequence. I mean, they wouldn't have had to edit anything. I don't think Shiro does like actual Triple X stuff in his manga. But anyway, but yeah, so the manga is much more unfocused, right? And kind of bouncing between different things, and they'll introduce themes and talk about them back and forth, and some themes that don't show up in the movie or the TV show or whatever. And that is kind of like, yeah, that would be an impact of things. There's a scene in the manga, which I don't think ever got into any of the other stuff, where they go into a ghost dubbing facility, where kids are basically being used, their brains are being used for as as spare storage devices. And one of the kids is like, thank God you can get me out of here. And I think it's Bato who says, hey, at least you have a job. I mean, there are people out in the street who would kill for a roof over their head and food and a job. And it's like, but this is horribly invasive, a terrible thing, and they didn't exactly sign up for it. But it's like, they also live in a world where unemployment is high, right? I have only read I have only read a few volumes of Battle Angel Alita, of the 96 there are out there. Not that many, but how many there are. So I can't argue to how Ghost in the Shell is, especially because, as I understand, it evolves significantly over the course of the story as to how dark and light it is. What I've seen is that Battle Angel is it's much more of an action story with occasional themes around around technology and such things, and throwing things away, and when that's appropriate and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, I think it has similarities, but it's not close to Ghost in the Shell. I thoroughly enjoyed the live action Ghost in the Shell, actually. Well, and also, her being white is part of the plot. Like her ethnicity is an explicit part of the script. So that is I cannot agree with arguments that makes the movie bad. They wrote that into the story. So and yes, I can still stream on Twitch. I just get a much bigger audience on YouTube. Just for whatever reason, Twitch just isn't really good for this. And Twitch just doesn't have a lot of a big anime fandom, right? It's just harder to pull in folks with that stuff. But I also need to connect to more folks. I need to connect to more folks on YouTube. Actually, that's one of the things I want to delve into. Yeah, they're doing an Alita movie, live action movie. Robert Rodriguez working on that one. Produced by James Cameron. But yeah. Yeah, I really like that backstory with Motoko. I thought that was a really clever, element. Yeah, it just came out at a bad time, unfortunately. But yeah. Yeah, so getting back to the topic, Hyper Police. I've not actually seen Hyper Police, but quite curious about that one. Oh, that was the thing. Spindle, you mentioned sexual undertones in Ghost in the Shell. You're right, and part of that is because Masamune Shirow is also a pinup artist, so a lot of his art is a lot of the way he makes money is by drawing, half naked girls, or in some cases, completely naked girls, which tends to cause that to spill over into other works. But he also deals with the fact that these things then change sexuality, right? When you can be when you can have whatever body you want, suddenly being male or female is more tricky. Witness the final scenes of the manga, right? But yeah. Oh, hey, Catfish Rider. Good seeing you. Gotcha. Yeah, and it's tough, Ideally, I was going to stream to all of them all at once, but I can't really do that right now. And also, let's be honest. This is not the outfit of somebody who has no sexual undertones, right? Like that is a pretty darn revealing outfit. I mean, even the outfit in Standalone Complex is pretty darn revealing. It's a pretty absurd outfit to be walking around in broad daylight with. So it's only there. I mean, obviously it's undertones, it's not overtones. But yeah. Well, then you look at shows like or franchises like Macross, for example, which is this interesting middle thing where the Macross is in many ways a hopeful future, in that humanity has kind of gotten past all of its troubles and has united, and people do coexist pretty happily. But then there's also they're constantly being attacked by aliens. There's also this very positive view of technology in Macross, where an alien spaceship can crash land on Earth, and we have completely reverse engineered it and have not only like made it work again, but have also like built our own versions of the technology within 15 years, which is just which is absurd. And then like we're out. We have colony ships within like 10 years of that. So there's just all sorts of stuff going on that is very upbeat in that way, but is also about this universe of constant war, and that we have to be constantly on our guard against those things. There's a beautiful element in Macross Frontier where, as usual, I don't think this is a spoiler to say that the aliens have to be beat back with a song, right, in some way. And the original song that they use has no words, but they end up adding words to it. Like people within the world of Macross Frontier write words for this song. And in the chorus, the singer sings this a couple of words, and it starts with basically be still, alien forces. And then it says, or she sings, fly, Frontier, which is the name of their big battleship. Meaning, all we want is for these alien forces to just chill and stop attacking us. And we will launch our battleship. It isn't attack Frontier. It isn't kill them Frontier. It is we will build the resources we need to defend ourselves, and we will deploy those so that we mean business. So it is this wonderful sort of middle ground where the Macross universe is very pro-military. It's just anti-war. And it's just this really interesting tension woven all through the storyline. Macross Plus is about test pilots. They're in the military. And so it is presenting this positive future for humanity in a lot of ways. And over the course of time, the alien races get integrated into civilization. But it's also, people dying a lot because of constant war. I saw like the first 2 episodes of Bosquash and loved it, but it was in the middle of a bunch of other shows, so I never got through Bosquash. Thoroughly enjoyed what I watched though. And Gurren Lagann's weird because it is very much a conscious throwback to cheesy giant robot shows. So it isn't trying to be realistic. It isn't trying to be a consistent vision of the future. It's trying to just... It's a nostalgia machine, which is much of its joy. Is people kind of reliving their childhood and recreating their childhood with all of the skills of an adult. So it is, Gurren Lagann is just tremendous fun. Absolutely, it is fun personified. But it doesn't slot easily. And yeah, very upbeat, very positive. You're absolutely right. But because there was partly because those giant robot shows of the 70s, even though they were about these sort of apocalyptic wars, generally the tone of those shows were light. They were about kids going out and fighting off the bad guys, giant robots. As somebody who got into anime in the late 90s, I certainly do not have the opinion that pre-2005 anime are not worth watching. I believe all anime is worth watching. I watch anime from the early 20th century. I think all anime is worth checking out at some level. You don't have to like everything, but yeah, absolutely. And I think saying no pre-2005 anime is worth watching is basically saying, Akira sucks, Evangelion sucks, Gundam sucks, Macross sucks, right? It's absurd. Ghost in the Shell, show me an anime fan who cannot watch Akira or Ghost in the Shell, and I will cry. Like, you don't have to like them, but it's like, really, you can't appreciate the quality of that? Bizarre. What I don't understand about that too is, as like people saying, because of Pixar's CGI, I cannot watch any hand-drawn Disney animated movies. Right? Because that's not what they've made in the past 10 years. So all that old stuff isn't worth watching. What? But the thing about Fire Lord Azula is the animation was not worse back then. The sheet counts were usually higher back then. The animation quality was often higher in an absolute sense. The art style was different. The coloration was different. I totally agree with that. But the amount of motion, the amount of care given to facial expression, in many ways, were better back then. And I know I'm speaking to, talking to the choir here, preaching to the choir here, but how many episodes should you watch before dropping? It depends. There's no, there's no standard, and partly because it depends on your tastes, right? I have watched anime where I've gotten 10 minutes in and said, nope, I'm out, right? Because they are sexualizing little girls, very straight in the show. And I was like, nope, can't go, nope, not gonna happen. But that's a bugaboo of mine, right? And the other things I'm just like, this is a by the book shonen anime, and I just don't care about this formula, right? So it's like, not for me. But other folks love it, and that's great, right? Different strokes for different people. I'm currently reading Seth Godin's latest book, This is Marketing, which is brilliant, because it is about how marketing is not buying advertisements. It's not about buying clicks and views and such. One of the things he points out is that the thing you have to understand is that Democrats and Republicans are both right. People who buy Gucci bags and people who never buy Gucci bags are both right. Meaning, in their own minds, they have reasons why they are Republican or Democrat, right? Why they buy Gucci bags or they don't buy Gucci bags. And whichever side of that line you're on, you're not going to convince them to go to the other side, right? Unless you come up with something that will get at their reasons for why they are on that side. And it's the same thing with anime, right? There are some things, there are some genres that just don't work for one person or the other, and that's fine. You can totally be your thing. The level of influence Stan Lee had on anime, that's complicated, John DeBosa, because influence is always just so hard to measure. Absolutely, Stan Lee inspired a lot of folks just with his use of character in comics. Certainly, a lot of Marvel stuff came over to Japan, and certainly, there's plenty of anime that is in some way or another inspired by the superheroes of Marvel and DC. I think certainly you look at shows like Tiger and Bunny, and you see a strong influence there. And well beyond the stuff where like, okay, Stan Lee actually, created this thing. But yeah. Yeah, there's, Stan Lee absolutely had an impact on anime, but he had an impact on pretty much everything. In terms of pop culture. It's hard to think of a thing that comics and superhero comics didn't touch in some way in, in some at least very minor way. Yeah, I had the same thing with Death Note. I dropped Death Note. And that's another important thing, DS. It's a great point. Is people seem to think that if you stop watching a show, that means that you are not allowed to ever go back and start it up again. And it's like, I can decide not to watch a show right now. And maybe, 6 months, a year from now, I'll be in the mood. And I'll go, that's fine, right? What's that weird thing? I have not seen the new Furikuri. But then I deeply appreciated the technical prowess and the animation quality of Furikuri, but the storytelling was kind of the opposite of the kind of thing I like. I don't like things that are random, and obviously there was the show was not completely random, but I found Furikuri frustrating. So I'm not a huge fan of Furikuri to begin with. So one of these days I'll check out the new seasons because I am interested. But it's just not really high on my list. So one of these days. Wolf Brigade. Do you mean Jinro? The 90s Jinro Wolf Brigade film? Great, Space Andy. Totally positive. Welcome back, Liquidus. I'm glad you went through everything and you're on the other side. Congratulations. That's awesome. What are your superpowers? Please let us know. I actually like more of. I actually like Chaos had more than Death Note of what I saw of them, but I didn't watch much of either, to be honest. And the other thing too, which I think folks don't appreciate, is that we also go through periods in our lives. Sometimes I just want to watch something fun, right? And I'll watch a goofy, silly show that I would not have watched 6 months ago because I'm just in the mood for it, right? And I just want things to relax and enjoy myself with. So that's totally fine. So, wow. Talk about a science fictional movie. So Jinro's interesting because Jinro is partly about the student protests of the 1960s and 70s in Japan. They wanted to explore that topic in that time, but in order to do so in a way that people would actually listen to, they put it in the future about a different event, right? It's often hard for people to be willing to listen to opinions about an actual real event, but if you fictionalize it a little bit, it's easier to swallow. So I love that movie because it is delving into excuse me. It is delving into these aspects of police response to civil unrest and civil disturbance. Jinro is a very prescient movie because it's very much about what we went through, a little while ago over here in America, and certainly we've not completely gone past it. This idea that police can get to a point where they're scary for the average citizen, right? There are always people for whom the police are scary, but where things can escalate in a very scary way. And Jinro did a great job of laying the foundation for that, of not just saying, well, one day an evil police officer decided to make the police evil, and now they're all evil, right? And come on. It was, no, things got worse and worse and worse, and police responded, and it escalated. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's about the student protests of the '70s, and this idea that things can get out of hand, but that you can't unwind history, right? You can't just pretend that escalation didn't happen, and then just decide to de-escalate the next day. So Jinro is very much about that, and thus it is also about personal trauma. Right, the main character is a traumatized person, and you can't rewind that. You can't just decide to not be traumatized tomorrow. It's really interesting in both those aspects. I find Oshii's films often difficult because they are so wordy and so slow, but I think Jinro does a good job of doing that as little as possible, if you will, and balancing all that stuff. Totally, yeah. Taste in anime changes, absolutely. Yeah, and you can totally just have fun with anime. Just sit back and make fun of it. I've done that in the past with some shows. Although there does come a point where I'm like, why am I wasting my time watching a show that I don't like? Like, I could be just watching a show and enjoying it, right? Instead of just making fun of it all the time. Like I do not have a lack of anime to watch. This is not the '90s where this is the only show at Sam Goody or at Blockbuster, so I just have to watch this. But yeah. Um, Rob Casher and Sins, fair enough. Um, I don't like Patlabor 2. I appreciate it. Um, it is a very interesting movie. There's actually a really good article about it in Macademia, where a guy basically just kind of deconstructs Patlabor 2 and explains why it's doing what it's doing. I didn't enjoy the film, but looking back on it, I understand all of the metaphors and all the symbolism in the film. So I get where it's going with what it's doing. I think it is an impressive layered film. But there's like a lot of yeah, no kidding. Sam Goody's where I bought my first anime. Um, it's a good example of where you can watch a film and say, this film isn't for me, but I can understand the craft in it. 2001's a great example. I don't enjoy watching 2001: A Space Odyssey, but I appreciate the craft, and I can pull things out of what's happening, right? Cool. Those will definitely give you superpowers. That's that. I mean, there are half a dozen anime from the '90s where exactly that gives people superpowers. So you're good. Um, Bubblegum Crisis is also interesting. It's an interesting future because one of the things they do in Bubblegum Crisis is present a future where the boomers, the androids, are going berserk and causing all this devastation, and these girls have to fight them back. But the world itself is fine, right? Other than these isolated attacks by boomers, which are bad, people die and so forth. But the boomers have created a functional society. People are going to work and they're raising kids and everything's functioning. But the idea is there's this element of technology that is spiraling out of control and needs to be checked, right? And it's not that the technology itself is fundamentally bad. It has been twisted in a problematic direction. Which is one of the reasons I think Bubblegum Crisis has had staying power, because it does have that more mature approach to technology. It's not just tech bad, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right. There's also an age aspect to it, where I'm sure there are certain things I watched as a kid that just didn't work for me, but now later on, totally does, and vice versa. Stuff I loved as a kid that just I tried to rewatch Voltron a while back. The magic's gone. And what's interesting is I could feel the nostalgia in my brain. I was having all the nostalgic, energy spikes bouncing around in my brain, and all of that, is it serotonin? All of those chemical reactions were happening, but my brain was also saying that's the only reason you're enjoying this, and that's nice. But I could also see all the other things about it that just weren't working for me anymore, and that's fine. But it is totally okay to not love the same thing every year of your life until you die. Ever watched a show because it was well praised, even though you want to drop it halfway? I don't think I've ever watched a show all the way through, just because other people liked it. There are probably shows I watched more of than I otherwise would have, just because folks liked it. I think the Pat Labor movies are good examples of that, actually, where I watched those and I was kind of bored the entire way, but I was like, I'll finish it. But yeah, there were probably, I'm just not constitutionally the kind of person who is. And here's the other thing. Yeah, I got into anime at a time when I didn't know anyone else was into anime. I was a complete loner outsider in this space. So there was nothing for me to base my opinions on. And so that has been how I've watched anime. I have never, while there's certainly grown opinions around anime, I'm just not driven by those, because that's not how I initially trained myself, if you will, to experience this stuff. I have not read the Komi-san manga, no. I recently did reread I'm an Alien, I Have a Question, which is a short doujin that Yoshitoshi Abe drew some years ago and had translated into English and published on Kindle, which is really funny because it's about this girl who looks totally like a human and shows up and actually has alien powers and does it. He also did a manga. What was the one about the girl, the nonverbal girl in the supermarket or the convenience store? Guy walks in and she just holds up signs because she can't talk. Very cute and funny. But yeah, I did finish A Silent Voice, the manga, which had an interesting ending. It was not the kind of ending I was quite expecting. No spoilers. I kind of expected a bigger ending, if you will. Instead, it's quieter than I thought. Kind of weird. Wholesome. Yeah, see, I like wholesome. Wholesome is something I look for. Not sappy, but wholesome. I need to take a quick research break, so I'll be back in just a few moments. And I'm now worried about showing anything on here, so I'm going to do the standby, and hopefully that will not give me any problems. I'll be right back. Okie doke. There we go. That's funny, Spindowin. I'm having the exact opposite reaction. I stopped watching anime because it's ruining the manga. And we're both right, right? Completely different perspectives. That is kind of the way that is. So I would love to expand the reach of this channel a bit, and work with some other YouTubers. Let me pull up. I know at some point I pulled together a list because you all were really good about suggesting other YouTubers that I should collaborate with, and I'm finally now at a point in my life where I have the time and the space to actually do that. So let me see if I can find let me under here. Doesn't need to be there. Let me try in the other location. I'm also kind of reorganizing things. Doesn't need to be there. Where do I have? I can just start a new document, I suppose. There's any suggestions about current YouTubers I could reach out to? I think it'd be good for collaborations. Yeah, Sailor Moon gets a little formulaic. Ooh. Yeah, I watched a bit of My Hero Academia, and it was just very shonen, which is fine. One Punch Man, definitely not my cup of tea, but that's just me. I'm kind of weird. Was this it? No. Where was my? Oh, that's good. I know I had. That's annoying. Maybe it's on the other. Maybe it's over here. That's it. But at the Sage. Because I'll be honest, I do not keep up with anime YouTubers because the signal to noise ratio is so low. I'm sure there are good people out there. Happy Console Gamer, thank you. William Chow. So I know there are good people out there, but it's just so hard for me to find them. Let me see here. I must have the list. I know folks who have suggested Happy Console Gamer. Archaeology, Miscellaneous. That's YouTube Anime Club. That's, yep, Happy Console Gamer. That was streaming service to try. Okay, that seems like it. Bob the Samurai, cool. Yeah. Yeah. And that's my problem with Kenshin. Is after I watched Rurouni Kenshin, I was like, every shonen I watch, I'm like, I would rather be rewatching Kenshin right now. So, Mother Basement. I've never heard of any of these people. The Anime Man. Cool. Yeah. I'm gonna put Happy Console Gamer at the very, very top of the list. I feel like it's time to have more conversations, like the conversations we have here. Did you, bro? Right? That's, of course, did you, bro? But yeah, I mean, I this is what I want out of life. This is what we. This is fun. This is interesting. And I think there's more discussion. There are more discussions to be had. Oh, I wanted to mention. So, what was it? Oh, wait. Let me save this, so it doesn't do that thing where and then my computer crashed and I lost the file. Always worried about that. Miscellaneous YouTubers to collaborate with. There we go. I watched this very interesting anime. Well, technically not anime, depending on how you define it. This past week called Green Day's Dinosaur and I. Green Days, like as in the band, but it's not about the band. It is a South Korean anime film from 2011. And it's a high school coming of age story set in the 1970s in Korea, South Korea, when, one second, glass reflection. There we go. Yeah, so the 70s in Korea was a time when the country was very much modernizing and expanding and so forth. So it's a great period for a story about adolescence and growing up. And it's this lovely kind of Studio Ghibli, very Whisper of the Heart style coming of age movie. A lot of attention paid to facial expression and getting a lot of emotion across in how people are looking at each other and talking and things. Stuff that people will have facial reactions that don't match their dialogue very intentionally, or where there's no dialogue, so you have to understand what they're thinking, which I always really appreciate in animation. Unfortunately, it's not low budget in the sense that it's cheap. It's low budget in the sense that they did not have a big budget, so they took a long time to make it, and the frame rate's a little low, and they basically don't shadow the characters at all. So it's basically just a flat color, which looks weird. Which is just kind of odd to look at. It doesn't look bad. It's just we're so used to, shadows on characters. But my gosh, I loved it. Very well thought out writing, very well thought out script, and just a lot of attention to detail. Really, really fun film. Unfortunately, very hard to find because it is a South Korean anime film. And it was on Amazon for a while, and then they lost the rights, and so it's hard to see all that stuff go. Yeah, there's a manga about autism. With the Light is a manga about a woman who discovers her child is autistic and the difficulties of that. But yeah, it's generally hasn't been addressed directly in anime that I'm aware of. You're right. Like I've said, I think Camille from Zeta is autistic. I think Amuro is probably has Asperger's. Or the creator passed away. That's a shame. Yeah, apparently autism is very rare in Japan. It's much more common over here in America. So there just hasn't been much call to address it. Comparatively speaking, obviously it exists, but it's not a big deal. And then, in fact, one of the things the manga dealt with is the fact that because it's less common in Japan and it's just culturally, it's hard to get resources about it because people don't want to admit it. People don't want to bother other people with their problems, if you will. So it's hard to find other people who have it, right? Cartoon Cipher. Interesting. Cool, thank you. And it's tough because we don't know what causes autism. So maybe there's something environmental that is causing less autism over there. We don't know, right? Or it could just be not as diagnosed. We can't tell. Perhaps they don't have as many vaccines as we do. I'm kidding. Gosh, that makes me angry. But yeah. Sorry, I have a little thing on my finger, and it's just a little bubble of skin, and I really want to pop it, and it's just really annoying me. Folks weren't seeing these earlier, and I just wanted to point out to folks who are curious. I have been experimenting with 3D printing of files. I'll just show this to folks really quickly. Trying to 3D print like figurines, anime figurines. And so here's a Hatsune Miku figurine, which hopefully we can get a decent lighting on. Get in a little closer. There we go. Still trying to get all of the pieces off. So a few things broke. You can see her hair kind of broke off at the bottom there. But you can see you get a fair amount of detail on these figurines.
go to the back, get a sense. Right, so not too bad. See her little boots there. I printed out another character, a more standard kind of anime girl character, and so we can you can see. Actually, I had some problems printing this one, so there's some gaps, there's some spaces here and there in the clothing, so to speak, which isn't part of the model. Just something weird happened with the printer, and like her arm just didn't print right, so I don't know what's going on there. In fact, I printed it twice. We get her boots and cool little motorcycle helmet there at the bottom. So, as you can see, the detail is certainly, pretty much at the kind of quality level you'd expect from a figurine that you'd buy. And then here is, I can paint it. I'll try. And here's a bust. Girl in a swimsuit. So definitely, like I said, the quality is pretty much there. You can see some layer lines a little bit in the hair, but, I mean, I'm sure some collectors would scoff, but I certainly wouldn't mind that. So yeah, pretty good. You can see the hair in the back, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this is just with standard desktop 3D printers. I'm not good at... I have learned to paint. You guys have seen my mini painting videos. But painting a figurine is different from painting a mini, right? It isn't just going to be all blonde, all yellow hair. So I'll have to figure that out and play around a little bit. I might 3D print a couple of these. Although this took like a day to print. But I might print up a few of those and then try different painting techniques to see what I can do. I mean, I could certainly just get some light blue on the bikini, things along those lines. But yeah, it'd be fun to play around with. It'd actually be a good experience in painting skin tones, because when I do a lot of stuff, bust, haha. Because when I'm painting minis, I'm painting fantasy characters, and you can just be more broad with skin tones. You can have a wide variety. You can have very dark brown skin, or black skin, or purple skin, or whatever, green skin, and it doesn't have to be realistic. Whereas with a bust, it needs to feel a little more, real. So that'll be interesting. Cool. Good. So Cartoon Cypher is, thinking through those things. I got a chance to have an interview with, or sit in on an interview with an anime voice actress at Anime USA, and we were talking about that, where she was like, people don't seem to realize that there are reasons why these things are done, right? The design's already pre-programmed. I literally just downloaded a file off the internet that had this, and then put it on the 3D, I had to do some I ran it through some software to prepare it for 3D printing, just to set it all up, and then copy the file to an SD card, put the SD card in the machine, and then this happened. So yeah, it's getting there. It's pretty cool. But part of the problem there is trying to find the right, find files that are easy to print. Folks will often throw up 3D files that are not designed for 3D printing, especially girls. The female figure is difficult to print effectively. Lots of weird, lots of curves, lots of hair. As you can imagine, printing all these little details makes a model that is easy to break. And it's easy for something to go wrong partway through, and just you get something that trails off or just breaks as you're working with it. So, that's interesting. I'm going to have to think about where Lane would fall on the spectrum, because I'm not sure. She's shy, but she does spend a lot of time trying to understand people around her. So that's interesting. I'd have to think about that, about just how, what the characteristics are and so forth, attributes. Definitely the female lead from Pet Girl. Definitely Yuki. Although, she's an alien, so it's kind of weird. But yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, you could argue that Washu from Tenchi Muyo has Asperger's, because she's just kind of bouncing around and doing whatever she wants to. Doesn't really pay attention to what other people's reactions to her behavior. Yeah.
Thinking back to some of the other anime characters like from the 70s and 80s that might fit. But part of the difficulty too is that the tsundere archetype often, feels like it could be there, but they're clearly trying to be tsundere, not really on the spectrum, right? So it's different. But yeah. Alrighty, everyone. I can feel my throat starting to back up here a little bit. So, Rei, absolutely. Rei's would definitely be on there. But again, she's kind of a special case. The girl from Taiga from Toradora. I've seen only bits and pieces of that show, but I wonder if she would classify. She definitely has tantrums, and she definitely has a tough time kind of interacting with people. Huh? I wonder. I'd have to watch it in that lens. That might be a reason for me to watch Toradora. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is a difficult kind of character to tell a story about anyway, because stories tend to be about characters interacting, and so when you have a character that has difficulty with that, it tends to make the show just difficult to write for. It's like there's an anime series with there's an OVA with a girl who is mute and only speaks using sign language, made in the I think early 2000s, and they said this is the first time that we've ever had a main character in an anime series use sign language. Ever. This is like 2003. Because it takes effort. Like literally, it costs money to animate, sign language. So, nobody was willing to put the time and money and effort into doing that. So, it slows down everything. It makes it harder to get things across to the viewer. So, definitely Ed from Bebop, agreed. Right, and L's kind of weird because L's just kind of in his own world, and also, I mean, Death Note's characters are all, or many of them are just so beyond the norm, right? That they tend to be kind of bizarre personality wise. Kind of like the characters like Durarara, where some of them are pretty normal, but some of them are just kind of like, okay, you're just that way all the time. So it doesn't really match that stuff. But yeah, that is interesting. I'll have to think about that. Huh. I wonder about the girl from I Can't Believe My Little Sister's that cute also. Right, edgy. Definitely. Because she's Kirino. Because she's kind of off in her own little world. I guess she's not so much on the spectrum. She's just more selfish. Right. That's interesting. All right, guys. I'm going to end it there. This has been a really fun conversation, as always. Not just fun, but thought-provoking, which is great. Let me double check my calendar, make sure there's nothing coming up. Obviously, we have Thanksgiving next week, but I should be back from that, no problem. That should not prevent me from doing anything. Yeah, we'll be up. We should be able to do anime on Black Friday. We should have a special conversation. Maybe we'll talk about buying anime next week. We'll see. Can I describe my reviewing style? I might do that next week as well. I'll think about that. My reviewing style is weird, but yeah, fair enough. All right, we'll be back next week. Thank you all very much again. Have a great week. Enjoy. See ya.